Get ready with me as I put on a full face of makeup because I have a full day of video recording ahead, and I thought I would share with you the things that are on my mind right now, the questions I have. Let's be honest, the things I'm deeply concerned about as it relates to retiring. So if you're new here, which there's a good chance you are, because I think this is my second video, welcome, my name is Karen. I am 55 years old and I am thinking seriously about retiring. And there's a lot of questions that I didn't know I would have that I do have, and I think some of you might be able to help me with it. And please excuse the fact that I'm putting contour on with a beauty brush. I cannot find my contour brush anywhere. I will probably find it sitting in the freezer or something like that, because hashtag, this is 55, right? This is what happens. So we're just improvising. So the first burning question I have in my mind is, am I going to be bored AF? I'll tell you a little story that's a little bit TMI, but I had to get a colonoscopy this week. 1-star, do not recommend, by the way, but you have to do what you gotta do when you're 55. And I was lucky enough to be one of the first appointments of the day. Hot tip, that's what you wanna do. You wanna get in early. And then the rest of the day, I just kind of chilled out in bed because I obviously wasn't feeling all that great. And the interesting thing was that you would think chilling out in bed with just, a book or your iPad and Netflix, whatever, would be fun, but it was the worst experience for me. I was so bored. I am not somebody who really operates in chill mode very well. I don't vacate very well. I don't really have relax mode. And part of this is because of my ADHD, but it's really more so because I had a mother who did not like to see her children just hanging out doing nothing. If she even noticed you slowing down a little bit, she would give you a jobbie. So I have spent my whole life feeling like busy is good, productivity is good, and relaxing and doing nothing is bad. And I don't actually think that's a very healthy thing, to be honest. So as I was laying there post-colonoscopy, I was thinking to myself, how on earth am I going to do this retirement thing and not lose my mind with the boredom? Because I am not someone who likes to do stuff. I don't like little day trips. I don't like going to visit museums. I would like to garden, but I live in Texas, so that's out the window. I can read for about 30 minutes and then I've had about enough of that. So there's not a lot of things that I like to do that are very time consuming. I do like making video content, oddly enough, but you can only do this so many hours of the day. And I've been reading this book recently, I'll put it here, where a bunch of researchers followed retirees from before their retirement through, I guess, until the end of their retirement. And one of the things they noticed is that folks who had more structure that was aligned with who they are and what their temperament was, the better their retirement was. So before people retired, they had them draw these bubble maps of what their life structure looked like. And for the majority of them, work was sort of this big bubble in the middle, and then friends, family, work, all these other things were just smaller bubbles around the big bubble of work. And then post-retirement, it changed. So the big bubble was, either family or friends or well-being, or in some cases watching TV, drinking too much. They followed all of these different people and their patterns through retirement. And I thought that was really interesting because my biggest bubble right now is work, but it's not a bad gig. I am self-employed, and that has given me a lot of gratification and structure and just enjoyment for the last 4 years. But I've come to realize I don't like appointments, and that makes coaching a very difficult thing to do because I don't want to commit my time to be on Zoom calls all day long. So that is why I'm now thinking about retirement. And if I think about my post-retirement bubbles, I think the biggest one would probably be well-being, but that can only take so many hours of the day. Then learning would probably be another one. Spending some time with family and friends. But aside from that, I have no idea how I'm going to spend my day to day. All I know is that laying around is absolute torture for me. I would seriously rather go back to a corporate job than do nothing at all. The other thing that I used to worry about a lot more than I do now is wondering if I were too young to retire. I guess I had this narrative in my head that once you retire, you flick a switch and you go from being young and an adult and just doing adulty things to starting your ultimate decay once you are a retired person. I know that is not true, but sometimes we have unexamined narratives in our head. So I had to really work on that one. But what has flipped the switch more for me recently are some surprise health issues that I've had, like thyroid issues, and my dermatologist during a regular checkup caught some skin cancer on my back. So PSA, please do get your annual checkups because you may not be able to see where things are happening on your body. So getting those things addressed, and then the colonoscopy and all of this other preventative stuff has made me realize that once you hit like your mid-50s, maintaining your health kind of becomes a full-time job. And if you already have a full-time job, and if you're caring for other people in your home and in your family, it makes caring for yourself that much more of a burden. So because of all of that, I'm now starting to see retirement at 55 as like a privilege and a good thing to do so that I can focus more on my health and well-being. Whereas before, I kind of had this unconscious belief that it was a bit of a cop-out. I don't have that anymore. And I'm really starting to realize that as someone who has been healthy their entire life, you can't take your health for granted at any age. And if you have the opportunity to spend more time and energy taking care of yourself and also do more things that are physically active now while you can, you're almost crazy not to. And so obviously that fear is not really front and center for me anymore, but it did take a lot of reflection to come to this realization that now is the time to start enjoying my go-go years, as they say. And then the last thing I worry about, and I would love to know if any of you have had this same thought, is my life going to shrink if I retire? Even this summer, as I've slowed things down in my business a bit, there's fewer emails coming in, I'm getting fewer phone calls or requests to do partnerships or whatever. And I think to myself, oh, is this the beginning of the end? Am I going to be completely irrelevant someday very soon? Which I realize is all coming from ego, but I'm also a human being, right? I have an ego, I am fallible, and I do worry, will my life get smaller? Because I did notice that when I turned 40, my life got smaller than what it felt like in my 30s. In my 30s, I went out more. I feel like I knew more people. I was doing more things. And then in my 40s, I kind of got a little complacent. And then in my 50s, I don't know if I would call it complacency so much as I lost patience for things that would drive me crazy. So I really cleared house on a lot of things in my 50s. And I worry, is retirement going to take me to the point where I have no friends and I just sit on the couch and watch TV all day? And I know that sounds like an extreme example, but me becoming a hermit is completely feasible given the amount of energy I have to leave the house these days. So I do worry about my life getting smaller because I believe that as your life gets smaller and smaller, it becomes harder to course correct once you notice it, right? Like I noticed my life getting smaller in my 40s, and while I didn't really have the urge to bring a lot more back into it, I did notice that my life got considerably slower and, let's say, less interesting than it was in my 30s. And that is something that worries me, that if I retire and my life continues to get smaller and smaller, I won't know how to course correct that unless some sort of big life event happens. And as I think about that, I don't think it would be a good life event that would happen. I don't want to traumatize myself back into a bigger life. I just want to make sure that the life I have now doesn't continue to shrink after retirement. So if any of you do have experience with that, with your life feeling like it shrunk after retiring, or any of the things that I mentioned, like being too young or getting bored to death, I would love to hear what you guys have to say about that. So thanks so much for watching, guys. This really felt like a bit of a therapy session. I appreciate it. And I will see you in the next video. Bye for now.